Chapter 1. The collision. I should have known better than to take the shortcut through Little Italy at midnight. But the subway had broken down 3 stops early. My phone was dead, and the October rain was coming down in sheets that turned the streets into rivers of neon and shadow. My sneakers were soaked through, my jacket plastered to my skin, and all I wanted was to collapse into my shoebox apartment and pretend this entire day hadn't happened. The gallery opening had been a disaster. Mrs. Chen had hated my restoration work on the Renaissance piece, called it pedestrian in front of half the art world elite of Manhattan, and I'd spent the rest of the evening watching my career aspirations circle the drain while sipping cheap Prosecco and forcing smiles. So, yes, I took the shortcut. The alley between Mulberry and Mott was darker than I remembered, the kind of darkness that felt intentional, curated, the kind that whispered turn around in a language older than words. But I was tired, wet, and too stubborn for my own good, a combination my Sicilian grandmother had always warned would get me killed. Testarda, she'd mutter, shaking her head. Stubborn girl. The sound of voices stopped me halfway through, not the casual chatter of late-night stragglers. These were low, controlled, dangerous. The kind of voices that came with decisions that couldn't be undone. I pressed myself against the brick wall, heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. Through the rain, I could make out shapes. 4, maybe 5 men, circled around something. Someone. The smart thing would have been to back away. To leave. To pretend I'd never seen anything. But then I heard the pleading. Please, I have kids. I swear I'll get you the money. You had 3 months. This voice was different. Colder. It didn't rise or fall with emotion. It simply was, absolute as gravity. I don't give 4th chances. Please. The sound of the safety clicking off was impossibly loud in the rain-soaked silence. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the exhaustion, the wine, the reckless energy of a day where nothing had gone right anyway. Maybe it was my grandmother's voice in my head, telling me that silence in the face of evil was its own sin. Stop. The word ripped out of me before I could think. And suddenly 5 pairs of eyes turned toward the darkness where I stood frozen, my voice still echoing off the wet stones. Idiota, fool. One of the men moved toward me, but the cold voice cut through the air like a blade. Don't. A figure stepped into the dim pool of light from a distant street lamp, and my breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. He was tall, over 6 feet, with the kind of build that came from discipline, not Jim's, lean and dangerous. His suit was black, probably worth more than my entire year's rent, and even soaked with rain, it hung on him like it had been stitched directly onto his body by Italian masters. Dark hair, slicked back but beginning to curl slightly in the humidity, and his face. God, his face was the kind that belonged in the Renaissance paintings I restored. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from marble, and eyes so dark they looked black in the shadows. Beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful. Mesmerizing, right up until they strike. He looked at me the way you'd look at an insect that had landed on your dinner plate. Curious, annoyed, calculating how best to dispose of it. Well, his voice was smooth, cultured, with the barest trace of an accent I couldn't quite place. We have an audience. How unfortunate. I should have run. Every instinct I possessed was screaming at me to turn around and disappear into the night. But my legs wouldn't move, and my voice, traitorous, reckless thing, kept talking. You can't just kill someone. One of his men laughed, but he silenced them with a look. Can't? He took a step closer, and even from 10 feet away I could feel the pull of him, the gravity well of power and danger. That's an interesting word choice. Tell me, Tesoro, what exactly gives you the authority to tell me what I can and cannot do? The endearment should have been sweet. From his mouth it sounded like a threat. Basic human decency? My voice came out shakier than I wanted. The law? The law. He repeated the word like it was foreign, amusing. Another step closer. Tell me something. Where are you from? That accent. His head tilted slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle he'd already solved but was toying with anyway. Queens, Brooklyn? Somewhere, beneath notice. The casual cruelty in his tone sparked something hot and dangerous in my chest. I'd spent my whole life dealing with people who looked down on me. For my neighborhood, my background, my grandmother's broken English, and my second-hand clothes. I'd learned to swallow it, to smile, to prove them wrong quietly. But tonight, I was too tired for quiet. The Sicilian poured out of me before I could stop it. The dialect my grandmother had taught me in her kitchen while she rolled dough and told stories of the old country. The dialect that belonged to mountain villages and ancient grudges, that most Americans couldn't understand, that even most Italians had never heard. Usceku para komu, upatruni uvoli, l'arroganza è l'arma di cui non havi più niente da dire. The donkey speaks as the master wishes. Arrogance is the weapon of those who have nothing left to say. The effect was instantaneous. The bored disdain in his eyes shattered like glass. His entire body went rigid, and for the first time since I'd stumbled into this nightmare, I saw something that might have been genuine emotion flicker across that perfect, terrible face, shock, recognition, and something else, something that looked almost like pain. What did you say? His voice had changed completely, lost all its smooth control. He was in front of me in 3 strides, so close I could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker, something that made my pulse spike for entirely different reasons. Say that again. His hand shot out and gripped my wrist, not painfully, but with an intensity that made it clear I wasn't going anywhere. Where did you learn that? The question came out rough, almost desperate. Who taught you? I tried to pull back, but his grip tightened. My grandmother, her name. It wasn't a request. Tell me her name. Tell me. Vittoria Russo. The words tumbled out. From Corleone, she came here in... His eyes widened, and the look on his face was so raw, so unguarded, that for a moment the dangerous stranger disappeared, and I saw someone else entirely. Someone younger, someone who'd lost something precious. Cazzo. The curse was whispered, almost reverent. He released my wrist and took a step back, running his hand through his wet hair. When he looked at me again, everything had changed. The calculation was still there, but now it was mixed with something I couldn't read. You're Vittoria's granddaughter. It wasn't a question. Behind him, the man who'd been pleading for his life was being hauled away by the others, apparently forgotten in whatever earthquake I'd just caused. How do you... Marco. He called to one of his men without taking his eyes off me. The car! Now! Wait! Panic flooded through me. I'm not going anywhere with you. That predatory smile returned, but this time there was something almost warm beneath it. Almost. Yes, he said softly, with absolute certainty. You are... He shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it around my shoulders before I could protest. It smelled like him. Expensive, dangerous, intoxicating. My name is Dante Salvatore. He said it like I should recognize it, like it should mean something. And you, Bella Ragazza, have just become the most interesting problem I've had in years. A black Mercedes pulled up to the mouth of the alley. Sleek and silent as a shark, we have a great deal to discuss. Starting with how you know words my father spoke on his deathbed, words no one else in this country should know. He gestured toward the car, and when I didn't move, he leaned in close enough that I could feel his breath against my ear. You can walk to the car, or I can carry you. But one way or another, Vittoria Russo's granddaughter, you're coming with me. The rain continued to fall, and somewhere in the distance, I heard my grandmother's voice again. Testarda. Stubborn girl, you're going to get yourself killed. Chapter 2. The Mansion of Ghosts. The Mercedes smelled like leather and danger. I sat as far from Dante Salvatore as physically possible in the back seat. His jacket still draped around my shoulders because some distant part of my brain apparently couldn't function well enough to throw it back at him. My hands were shaking. From cold, from fear, from the adrenaline crash that was making my entire body feel like it belonged to someone else. The driver didn't speak. Didn't even look at me through the rearview mirror. He drove with the kind of focused silence that suggested he'd seen worse things than dripping. Terrified women being collected from dark alleys at midnight. Dante sat perfectly still beside me, one arm stretched along the back of the seat, not touching me, but close enough that I was painfully aware of him. He'd rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing forearms that were all lean muscle and expensive watch. He was looking out the window, his profile sharp against the passing lights of the city. "Where are you taking me?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Somewhere we can talk privately." "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed, still not looking at me. "It's not." We'd left Manhattan behind, crossing into what I thought might be New Jersey, though the rain made it hard to tell. The buildings grew sparser, the streets wider and darker. Money streets, the kind where people didn't hear screams. "If you're going to kill me," I said, surprised by the flatness in my own voice, "at least tell me why." That made him turn. His eyes found mine in the darkness, and even in the low light, I could see they weren't truly black. They were a brown so dark it looked like smoke. Ancient eyes and a young face. "If I wanted you dead, Piccola, your body would still be in that alley." He said it matter-of-factly, the way someone might discuss the weather. "I want information. That's all? About my grandmother? About what she taught you? How much she told you? What you know that you shouldn't?" The car turned onto a private road, barely visible between towering oaks that formed a tunnel of darkness. At the end, gates appeared, wrought iron, 15 feet tall with cameras that swiveled to track our approach. They opened silently, and we drove through. The house that emerged from the rain-soaked darkness wasn't a house at all. It was a fortress disguised as a Renaissance villa. 3 stories of pale stone and arched windows, with a fountain in the center of the circular drive that probably cost more than most people's homes. Lights glowed behind heavy curtains, warm and inviting in a way that made my skin crawl. Beautiful things could be prisons too. "Home, sweet home," Dante murmured, and there was something bitter in his voice. The driver opened my door, and I realized I had a choice to make. I could run, though where I'd run to on a private estate in the middle of nowhere, I had no idea. I could scream, though I suspected no one would hear, and even if they did, no one would come. Or I could walk through those doors and hope I was smart enough to walk back out again. Dante was already out of the car, waiting with the kind of patience that suggested he knew exactly what I was thinking. "I'm not a monster," he said quietly, "despite what you saw tonight. You were going to kill that man. I was going to execute someone who stole from me, endangered my people, and had 3 months to make it right." His tone didn't change. "There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing." Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. "Then perhaps you should come inside and see things from a different angle." He offered his hand. I looked at it for a long moment. Long fingers, manicured nails, a signet ring on his pinky that caught the light, a hand that had probably ended lives, a hand that had touched me with surprising gentleness in that alley. I didn't take it. I got out of the car on my own and walked past him toward the entrance, head high despite the fact that I was soaked, exhausted, and terrified. I heard him laugh softly behind me, just like her. Vittoria was exactly like this. The inside of the house was even more overwhelming than the outside. Marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, a double staircase that curved up to the second floor, art on the walls that I recognized from textbooks, originals, not prints, Caravaggio, Artemisia Gentileschi, a small Bernini sculpture on a side table, lit like it belonged in a museum, which it probably did. "You collect stolen art," I said flatly. "I collect recovered art," he corrected, shrugging off his wet shirt with casual grace that made my mouth go dry. Beneath it, his chest was exactly what I'd feared it would be, perfectly sculpted, with a scar that ran from his left shoulder down toward his ribs. A reminder that the danger wasn't just in his eyes and his voice, pieces that were lost, forgotten, abandoned by people who didn't understand their value. He pulled a dry shirt from somewhere and slipped it on, and I forced myself to look away. "There's a guest suite on the second floor," he said. "Marco will show you. There are clothes that should fit, a bathroom, everything you need. Get dry, get warm, and then we'll talk." "I can leave whenever I want?" I asked, not bothering to hide my skepticism. "No," at least he was honest. "But you're not a prisoner either. Think of yourself as a guest whose departure is temporarily inconvenient." That's literally the definition of a prisoner. His smile was sharp and genuine. I like you, Vittoria's granddaughter. You don't pretend to be less intelligent than you are. Elena. The name came out before I could stop it. My name is Elena. Elena. He said it slowly, tasting it. Elena Russo. Yes. That fits. Marco appeared from somewhere in the depths of the house, silent as a ghost, and gestured for me to follow him. I did, because what choice did I have? But as I reached the stairs, I looked back. Dante was standing in the center of that massive foyer, surrounded by his stolen, recovered art, looking up at me with an expression I couldn't read. Elena, he called softly. That dialect you spoke? My father used it when he wanted to hide things from his men. When he told me stories about the old country that no one else was meant to hear, he said it was dying, that when he died, the words would die with him. He took a step closer to the stairs, and his voice dropped even lower. So tell me, how does a girl from Queens know the private language of the dead? The question hung in the air like smoke, and I realized, with a chill that had nothing to do with my wet clothes, that whatever I'd stumbled into tonight wasn't going to let me go easily, if it let me go at all. Chapter 3. Secrets in the Study Diary. Guest suite was bigger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that probably looked beautiful in daylight, but now just looked like organized darkness. A 4-poster bed with silk sheets, an ensuite bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool, and true to Dante's word, a closet filled with women's clothes in exactly my size. I tried not to think about why he had those. The shower was scalding, and I stood under it until my skin turned red and my mind finally slowed enough to think, to process what had happened, what was still happening. I'd witnessed a near execution. I'd been taken by a man who was clearly dangerous in ways I couldn't begin to understand. I was in his house, wearing his clothes, soft cashmere pants and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and no one knew where I was. My phone was still dead in my bag. Even if it weren't, who would I call? The police? And tell them what? That I'd seen a crime and now the criminal had invited me to his villa for a chat? I caught sight of myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair hanging in wet ropes down my back. But beneath the exhaustion there was something else. A spark of defiance that looked disturbingly like my grandmother's eyes staring back at me. What would Nonna do? She'd face it head on. She'd been through the war. Lost her husband young, raised 3 kids alone in a country where she barely spoke the language. She hadn't survived by running, neither would I. Marco was waiting outside my door when I emerged, and he led me through a maze of hallways to a room at the back of the house. He knocked once, then departed without a word, leaving me standing in front of a heavy wooden door that looked like it belonged in a medieval castle. Come in. Elena. Dante's voice carried through easily. The study was everything the rest of the house wasn't. Lived in, warm, personal. Books lined 2 walls, floor to ceiling, with titles in Italian, English, French. A fireplace crackled on the 3rd wall, and in front of it sat 2 leather chairs and a small table with a bottle of what looked like expensive scotch and 2 glasses. Dante stood by the window, backlit by the rain still streaming down the glass. He'd changed into dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that made him look less like a mobster and more like a professor. Almost approachable. Almost. Sit, he said, gesturing to one of the chairs. I sat, more because my legs were still shaky than because he'd told me to. He poured 2 glasses of scotch, handed me one, then settled into the other chair. For a moment we just looked at each other across the firelight. Your grandmother, he finally said. Vittoria Russo from Corleone. She married a man named Antonio. They had a daughter, your mother, I assume, and she taught you the mountain dialect, the one that disappeared from Sicily decades ago. You know a lot about my family. I know a lot about families that came from Corleone. He swirled the scotch in his glass. My father was born there, in the mountains outside the town. His family was old, connected, powerful in ways that Americans don't understand. Mafia, I said flatly. That's a crude word for a complex system. But he didn't deny it. My father left Sicily in the 70s, came here, built an empire, but he never forgot where he came from. Never forgot the language, the old ways, the codes. And he taught them to you. Some of them. Dante took a sip of his drink. Enough that when I heard you speak tonight, I thought I was hearing a ghost. I hadn't touched my scotch. What does any of this have to do with me? That's what I'm trying to understand. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the firelight carved shadows across his face that made him look older, harder. My father died 6 years ago. Cancer. At the end, when the morphine made him forget to guard his words, he told me things. Stories about Sicily, about the families there, about a woman he knew before he left. My stomach dropped. No, her name was Vittoria. She was 16, he was 18. They were... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Promised to each other. Not formally, not yet, but everyone knew. And then his family was betrayed. They fled in the night, left everything behind, including her. That's impossible. My grandmother married my grandfather. 3 years later, yes. Dante's voice was gentle now, almost kind. Antonio was a good man, I'm sure. But he wasn't my father. And if the dates line up the way I think they do, no. I stood up, the word coming out too loud. You're saying your father and my grandmother were in love? Yes. And he spent his entire life here, building power, making money, rising through the ranks. But he never went back, never contacted her, never told anyone except me, at the very end, when he knew he was dying. I paced to the window, my reflection pale in the rain-streaked glass. This couldn't be true. It was insane. My grandmother had never mentioned anyone named Salvatore, never talked about a first love in Sicily, but she had taught me that dialect. And she'd always gotten this faraway look when she spoke it, like she was seeing something I couldn't. Even if this is true, I said slowly, what does it have to do with me? With tonight? You tell me. Dante was standing now too, moving toward me with that predatory grace. Why were you in that alley? Of all the alleys in Manhattan, on this specific night, at this specific time, why there? It was random. The subway broke down. I don't believe in random. Not when it comes to family, to blood. He was close now, too close, but I refused to back up. My father's dying words were in that dialect. He told me that the past never dies in Sicily, that debts carry through generations, that one day, someone would come who knew the old words, and I would have to choose. Choose what? He never got to tell me. He died with your grandmother's name on his lips. The silence that followed was broken only by the crackling fire and the drumming rain. This is insane, I whispered. I came here to restore art and build a career. I don't know anything about Mafia families or blood debts or Elena. My name in his mouth was soft, dangerous. Do you believe in fate? No, neither did I. Until I heard a woman speak words I thought died with my father. Until I looked into her eyes and saw someone I'd been mourning for years. He reached out, his fingers ghosting along my jaw, not quite touching. Tell me you don't feel it, this pull, this recognition. I did feel it. God help me, I did. Tell me about your mother, he said quietly. When was she born? 1975. Why, the realization hit me like cold water. December. She was born in December 1975, 9 months after his father fled Sicily. Dante's hand dropped away, and he stepped back, his expression transforming into something between wonder and devastation. Madonna Santa, he breathed. You're not just Vittoria's granddaughter. You're his. You're my... The door burst open. Marco stood in the entrance, his face tight with urgency. Boss, we have a problem. The Costello family knows she's here. Dante's entire demeanor changed in an instant, the vulnerability vanishing, replaced by the cold commander I'd seen in the alley. How? Someone talked. They're demanding we turn her over. Over my dead body. Marco's expression said that might be exactly what was required. Dante turned to me, and in his eyes I saw the truth he hadn't spoken yet, the truth that changed everything. Whatever you were before tonight, he said quietly, you're family now, and I protect family, no matter what it costs. Outside, the rain fell harder, and somewhere in the darkness, engines approached. Chapter 4. Blood ties and battle lines. The sound of cars on gravel cut through the night like breaking glass. Dante moved with the precision of someone who'd prepared for moments like this his entire life. He crossed to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a handgun, matte black, deadly efficient. He checked the magazine with practiced ease, then looked at Marco. How many? 4 cars, maybe 15 men? Costello himself? No confirmation, but probably. He doesn't send that many unless he's coming personally. I stood frozen by the window, my mind struggling to process what was happening. 5 minutes ago, I'd been learning that I might be connected to Dante through blood, through history, through secrets that spanned continents and decades. Now there were men with guns outside demanding, "What? Me? I don't understand," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "Who are the Costellos? Why do they want me?" Dante holstered the gun at his back and moved toward me. His hands landed on my shoulders, firm but not painful, forcing me to meet his eyes. The Costello family controls the South Bronx. They've been trying to move into our territory for years, and apparently someone told them that the woman I collected from their district tonight might be valuable. His jaw tightened. "They're testing me, seeing if I'll trade you for peace." "Then trade me." The words came out before I could think them through. "I'm not worth a war." The look he gave me was so intense it felt like burning. "You don't get to decide your worth, Piccola. And you certainly don't get to offer yourself as a sacrifice to men who would destroy you just to hurt me. You barely know me." "I know enough." The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the walls. Voices, sharp and aggressive, carried on the wind. Marco shifted by the door. "Boss, orders?" Dante released my shoulders and moved to the desk again. This time he pulled out a phone. Not a regular cell, something different, encrypted probably, and made a call. "Carlo, I need everyone at the main house. Now. Yes, all of them." He paused, listening. "No, this isn't a negotiation. The Costellos are here, and they're about to learn why you don't threaten what's mine." He ended the call and looked at me again. "Elena, I need you to trust me." "Can you do that? Could I?" This man was a stranger. A criminal. Someone who'd held a gun to another human being hours ago. But he was also someone who'd looked at me like I was a ghost of someone he loved. Someone who'd called me family, and right now, he was the only thing standing between me and whatever the Costellos wanted to do with me. I don't have much choice. There's always a choice. But yes, in this moment, trusting me is the smarter one. He moved to a section of bookshelves and pulled, revealing a hidden door. "Marco will take you downstairs. There's a safe room, reinforced, fully stocked. You'll stay there until this is resolved. You're going out there." It wasn't a question. "This is my home, my territory, and you're under my protection now." He said it like an oath. "They won't touch you. I promise you that." I wanted to argue. To tell him this was insane, that nothing about me was worth this kind of confrontation. But the doorbell rang, a civilized sound that felt obscene given the circumstances, and Dante's expression hardened into something that made him look like the Renaissance paintings I restored. "Beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Go," he said quietly. "Now." Marco took my arm, gentle but insistent, and guided me toward the hidden door. Behind it, stairs descended into darkness, but before I started down them, I looked back. Dante was adjusting his cufflinks, his expression calm, composed. "Every inch the prince in his castle." Our eyes met across the room. "Don't die for me," I said. His smile was sharp as broken glass. "I won't, but I might kill for you. We'll see how the conversation goes." Then Marco was pulling me down the stairs, and the hidden door closed behind us with a sound like a tomb ceiling. The safe room was exactly what he'd promised. A windowless chamber with reinforced walls, monitors showing various angles of the house, a kitchenette, a bathroom, even a bed, a gilded cage for emergencies. Marco checked the monitors, then looked at me. "Don't open this door for anyone but Mr. Salvatore or me. Understood? What if something happens to both of you? Then you use the tunnel." He pointed to another hidden door. "It comes out 1/2 mile from here near the highway. There's a car waiting. Keys in the ignition. cash in the glove box, drive south, ditch the car in Philadelphia, disappear. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was giving directions to the grocery store. Has he done this before? Protected people like this? Marco's expression softened slightly. Mr. Salvatore takes care of his own. Always has, but... He hesitated. I've worked for him for 8 years. I've never seen him look at someone the way he looked at you tonight. You mean like a puzzle he needs to solve? No, like something he'd lost and found again. Marco moved to the door. Stay here. Stay quiet. And trust that he knows what he's doing. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the monitors and my racing thoughts. On one of the screens, I could see the front of the house. 4 black SUVs were parked in the circular drive, and men in dark suits, probably hiding enough weapons to start a small war, stood in formation. In the center, a man who had to be Costello, older, stocky, with silver hair and the kind of face that had seen too much and forgotten how to smile. Dante emerged from the front door, flanked by Marco and 2 other men. No visible weapons, but I knew they were armed. The way they moved said it clearly enough. I turned up the audio, and Costello's voice filled the room. Salvatore, you've been busy tonight. Making collections in my own territory isn't busy, Costello. It's routine. Including collecting stray women? Costello's smile didn't reach his eyes. Word is, she's interesting. Valuable. The kind of valuable that could smooth over a lot of tensions between our families. She's not available for negotiation. Everything's negotiable. You taught me that yourself, back when you were your father's enforcer. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, became more dangerous. That was a long time ago. And you've mistaken business pragmatism for moral flexibility. This woman is under my protection. That makes her untouchable. Since when do you care about random civilians? Costello took a step forward, and his men tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Unless she's not random. Unless she's something more. What she is, Dante said softly, is none of your concern. Then we have a problem. Because I'm making her my concern. You have 2 choices, Salvatore. Hand her over, and we forget tonight happened. Or refuse, and remember that you're not the only one with resources in this city. The silence that followed felt like the moment before a storm breaks. Dante smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on a human face. Let me offer you a 3rd choice, Costello. You get back in your cars, drive out of my territory, and never mention this woman again. And in return, I won't paint my driveway with your blood. The audio picked up the sound of safeties clicking off. At least a dozen weapons, maybe more. Costello's eyes narrowed. You're willing to start a war over some girl you met tonight? I'm willing to end you for threatening what's mine. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. And then, from the darkness beyond the lights, more cars appeared, dozens of them. Dante's reinforcements. The Costello men shifted nervously as they realized they were suddenly outnumbered 3-1. Costello's face went red. This isn't over, Salvatore. Yes, Dante said quietly. It is. You just don't know it yet. The Costello men retreated to their cars, and within minutes, the driveway was empty again except for Dante's people. I watched him on the monitor, standing alone in the rain that had started falling again, looking up at the sky like he was asking God a question. Then he turned and looked directly at the camera, directly at me, and mouthed 2 words. You're safe. But as his men dispersed and the house settled back into silence, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I wasn't safe. I was protected, guarded, valued. But safe? That ship had sailed the moment I learned his father's secret language. And now I was drowning in waters I didn't understand. With a man who might be family, might be dangerous, and might be the only person in the world who could understand why I suddenly felt like I'd been sleepwalking through my life until tonight. The monitor showed Dante walking back inside, coming. For me, and I still couldn't decide if I should run toward him or away. Chapter. And Unraveling Truths. The hidden door opened 30 minutes later. I'd spent those 30 minutes pacing, watching monitors, trying to understand how my life had become unrecognizable in the span of a few hours. The Elena who'd left work tonight felt like a stranger. That woman had worried about art restoration and career trajectories and whether she could afford new shoes. This Elena was standing in a Mafia safe room, protected by a man who might be blood, watching wars nearly start over her existence. Dante stood in the doorway, rain-dampened and exhausted-looking in a way that made him seem more human. He'd lost the cold control somewhere between the confrontation and this moment. "They're gone," he said. "For now. For now." I repeated his words, tasting the impermanence. "Meaning they'll be back. Probably." He stepped fully into the room, and Marco closed the door behind him, leaving us alone. "Costello doesn't give up easily, and now that he knows you're important enough for me to risk open conflict." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "I've made you a target. I was already a target the moment I opened my mouth in that alley. No, you were a witness. Inconvenient but manageable." He moved to the monitors, checking each screen with practiced efficiency. "But when I refused to hand you over, when I called my entire organization in to protect you, that made a statement. That said you're valuable beyond reason. Am I?" The question came out quieter than I intended. "Valuable beyond reason?" He turned to look at me, and the expression on his face was so raw it hurt to see. "You speak words my father spoke to me in secret. You carry the face of a woman he loved until his dying breath. You might be—" He stopped, the words choking off. "I need to know the truth, Elena, about your grandmother, about your mother, about us. What if the truth doesn't change anything? What if we're not related at all and this is just coincidence? Do you believe that?" He moved closer, and I could smell the rain on him. The gunpowder, the expensive cologne beneath it all. "Do you really think fate brought you to that specific alley on the night I happened to be there, speaking words no one else alive should know? You're a woman who restores art. You understand how pieces fit together. What does this look like to you? A masterpiece, a disaster, a convergence of brushstrokes that shouldn't work, but somehow created something impossible to look away from. I think," I said slowly, "that my grandmother kept secrets, that she never talked about Sicily except in that dialect, and she always got this haunted look when she did. I think my mother had dark eyes like yours and died when I was 12. And I never knew who my grandfather was because Nonna wouldn't talk about him." The words were coming faster now, pieces clicking into place. "I think you're right, and I hate that you're right, because it means everything I thought I knew about my family was built on silence and grief." Dante's hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. "I'm sorry. For what?" "For my father. For leaving her. For creating a wound that bled through generations until it brought you here." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "You deserved better than this. I should have pulled away. Should have maintained distance." Reminded him, and myself, that this situation was already complicated enough without whatever magnetic pull existed between us. But I didn't. "Tell me about him," I whispered. "Your father? What was he like?" Dante's hand dropped, and he moved to the small couch against the wall, sinking into it like his strings had been cut. After a moment, I sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "Ruthless," he said finally. "Brilliant. Terrifying when he needed to be. But with me, with family, he was different, soft. He taught me chess and told me stories about Sicily, the mountains, the villages, the codes of honor that were older than countries." His voice grew quieter. "He told me that power was a responsibility, not a privilege. That every life I took, every decision I made, would echo through time. You became just like him. I became what he built me to be. The son who would carry forward his empire, his name, his vision." He looked at me. "But in the end, he told me that none of it mattered. That the only thing he regretted was leaving her. Vittoria, your grandmother." "Did he say why he never went back? Never contacted her?" "His family was marked for death. The betrayal that forced them to flee. It wasn't just about business. It was blood, old grudges, the kind that don't forgive or forget. If he'd gone back, if he'd contacted her, he would have brought that death to her doorstep." Dante's jaw clenched. "So he stayed away, built a new life, married someone suitable, had me, created this empire. and buried his heart somewhere in the Sicilian mountains where he left it. I felt tears burning my eyes. She never married for love either. Antonio was kind, but she always seemed elsewhere, like she was waiting for someone who never came. They were both ghosts, Dante said softly, haunting each other across an ocean. We sat in silence, the weight of generations pressing down on us. There's a way to know for sure, I said eventually. DNA test. No. His response was immediate. The moment we involve technology, systems, records, we create evidence, a paper trail that could be used against us. Against you, so we just, assume? We trust what we feel. He turned to face me fully, one leg bent on the couch, his knee almost touching mine. You felt it in that alley, didn't you? The recognition. Like you'd seen me before. I had. God help me, I had. That doesn't mean we're related. It could be, attraction. He said the word I'd been avoiding. You think that's what this is? I don't know what this is. Neither do you. I know that when I heard you speak my father's language, something in me woke up that's been sleeping for years. I know that looking at you feels like looking at answers to questions I didn't know I was asking. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. I know that the idea of the Costellos or anyone hurting you makes me want to burn the world down. That's not love. That's possessiveness. Maybe. Or maybe it's what love looks like in my world. Dangerous. Absolute. Worth killing for. I should have pulled my hand away. Should have stood up. Demanded he take me home. Ended this before it became something neither of us could walk away from. But his thumb was tracing patterns on my palm, and his eyes were so dark I could see myself reflected in them. And every rational thought I possessed was drowning in the undertow of whatever this was between us. I need to go home, I whispered, not moving. I have work tomorrow, a life. Friends who will worry. I'll have someone call your work. Tell them you're sick. Your friends, he paused. Who would worry? I thought about it and realized the answer was no one. Not really. My life in the city had been solitary, focused on restoration work and building a career. I had colleagues, not friends. Acquaintances, not family. I'd been alone long before tonight. No one, I admitted. Then stay. Just for tonight. Let me figure out how to keep you safe before you go back to a world where I can't protect you. I don't need protection. Yes, he said softly. You do. Whether you want to admit it or not, you're in danger now. The Costellos know about you. Others will too. And the only thing keeping you alive is the fact that I've claimed you. The word, claimed, sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow I start making calls, reaching out to allies, making it known that you're under Salvatore protection, and anyone who touches you answers to me. His hand tightened on mine. And you decide if you can live with that, with being connected to this world. To me, I don't have a choice, do I? There's always a choice, Elena. But some choices are made for us long before we're born. By fathers who flee in the night, by grandmothers who keep secrets, by fate, if you believe in it. I looked at our joined hands, his scarred and dangerous, mine stained with paint and restoration chemicals, worlds apart, but fitting together like puzzle pieces cut from the same image. I should hate you, I said. Yes, you should. I should be terrified. You are. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt like a promise and a threat. But you're also curious, drawn to danger, just like she was. Nonna and my father. His smile was sad. Maybe that's what we inherit. Not just blood, but the inability to walk away from things that could destroy us. Outside, dawn was beginning to break over the estate, and neither of us moved. Neither of us let go, because we both knew that everything had changed, and there was no going back to the lives we'd lived before our worlds collided. Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. Woke up to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize. For a confused moment, I thought I was still in my apartment. That last night had been some fever dream, brought on by exhaustion and cheap wine. But then I registered the silk sheets, the massive room, the distant sound of fountains, and memory crashed back like cold water. Dante. The alley. The Costellos. The revelation about my grandmother. Everything. I sat up, realizing I was alone in the guest suite, still wearing the expensive clothes he'd provided. Someone had covered me with a blanket at some point, probably after I'd fallen asleep on the couch in the safe room, exhausted by fear and adrenaline and conversations that rewrote my entire understanding of my family. A knock at the door made me jump. Miss Russo? A woman's voice, accented older. Mr. Salvatore asked me to bring breakfast, and to tell you he's waiting in the garden when you're ready. I found my voice. Thank you. I'll be out soon. The woman left, and I stumbled to the bathroom, catching sight of myself in the mirror. I looked haunted. Dark circles under eyes that seemed bigger than usual. Hair a tangled mess. Lips still swollen from where I'd bitten them during the confrontation last night. Looked like someone being pulled apart by forces beyond her. Control, maybe I was, after a quick shower and changing into fresh clothes from the mysteriously well-stocked closet. This time simple jeans and a cashmere sweater. I made my way downstairs. The house looked different in daylight, less fortress and more museum. Every surface gleamed, every piece of art perfectly placed, beautiful and cold. A different man, not Marco, stood near the front entrance. He nodded politely and gestured toward French doors that led to the garden. Outside, the rain had left everything glistening and green. The gardens were extensive, with manicured hedges and marble sculptures, and a central fountain where water danced in the morning light. And at a small table beneath a pergola draped with wisteria, Dante sat reading a newspaper, an espresso cup at his elbow. He looked up as I approached, and the transformation in his expression, from distant businessman to something warmer, more genuine, was startling. You slept. He stood, pulling out a chair for me. Good. You needed it. You didn't. It wasn't a question. The faint shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, told the story clearly enough. I had calls to make, arrangements to confirm. He poured me an espresso from the small pot on the table. The Costellos have gone quiet. Too quiet, and I don't trust it. I accepted the cup, wrapping my hands around its warmth despite the mild morning. What happens now? Now we talk about your options. About what comes next. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. I can arrange for protection at your apartment. Guards, surveillance, a panic button directly to me. You go back to your life and we maintain distance except for security check-ins. Or you stay here, under full protection, hidden from anyone who might use you to hurt me or my organization. Those are both prison sentences, just different walls. His smile was thin. Yes, welcome to my world. Freedom is a luxury we don't get. I set down the espresso, my hands shaking slightly. There has to be another option. Something that doesn't involve me becoming a prisoner or a target. There is. He leaned forward, and his eyes were intense, burning. You disappear. New identity, new city, new life. I have resources. I can make Elena Russo vanish and replace her with someone else. Someone safe. The offer hung in the air between us. A chance to escape. To become someone new. To leave behind not just this danger, but everything. My struggling career, my empty apartment, my lonely existence in a city that had never quite felt like home. Who would I become? I heard myself ask. Anyone you want. Art restoration jobs in Florence, Paris, London. A trust fund to support you. Papers so good even governments would believe them. He said it matter-of-factly, like he'd done this before. Maybe he had. You'd be free, Elena. Truly free. The way my father should have let your grandmother be. It was perfect. Too perfect. What's the catch? You never come back. You never contact anyone from your old life. And you never... He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. You never see me again. The pain in his voice was unexpected. Raw. Would that bother you? I asked softly. If I disappeared? Yes. No hesitation. More than it should, given we've known each other less than 24 hours. Maybe that's the answer then. Maybe whatever this is, I gestured between us. It's too intense, too fast, too dangerous. Maybe the smart thing is to cut it off before someone gets hurt. Or killed. Or killed, I agreed. We sat in silence, The fountain's gentle splash the only sound. Somewhere in the distance, birds sang, oblivious to the human drama unfolding beneath the wisteria. My father used to tell me a story, Dante said finally, about a man who loved a woman so much that he gave up everything to keep her safe. His family, his name, his home. He sent her away, told her to forget him, to build a new life. And she did. She married, had children, grew old somewhere he could never find her. And he became powerful, wealthy, untouchable, but hollow. Was the story about him and my grandmother? I think so. He never said directly, but the way he told it, the way his voice broke at the end. Dante looked away. He died still loving her, still wondering if he'd made the right choice. Did he? She lived. She was safe. So yes, probably. But he spent 40 years paying the price for that choice. I felt tears burning my eyes. I don't want to be the ghost you carry for 40 years. Then don't be. He reached across the table, taking my hand. Stay. Fight. Let me protect you while we figure out what this is between us. Give it a chance to be real instead of just another story about sacrifice and regret. People could die, Dante. That man last night in the alley. You were going to kill him. The Costellos. They're not going to just give up. And if something happens, if someone gets hurt because of me, then it's my choice. My responsibility, not yours. His grip tightened. You don't get to carry the weight of my world, Elena. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? You trust me. You let me do what I do. And you... He paused, searching for words. You remind me why I'm doing it. Why power and protection and all of this matters. You be the thing my father never got to have. And what's that? A second chance. The French doors burst open. Marco appeared, his face tight with urgency. Boss, we have a problem. Dante was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting. What kind of problem? Costello made a move. He went to the feds. There's a warrant. They're coming here. I felt the blood drain from my face. A warrant for what? Marco's eyes flicked to me, then back to Dante. For her. They're claiming you kidnapped Elena Russo from a public street last night. They have witnesses. They have lies, Dante said flatly. Costello manufactured this. Bought testimony, probably. But the warrant's real. Marco pulled out his phone, showing a document. They'll be here within the hour. My mind was reeling. Kidnapping, federal charges. This was spiraling out of control, becoming something none of us could contain. Then we give them what they want, I said, standing. I go with them. Tell them the truth, that I came willingly, that you protected me, that... No! Dante's voice cracked like a whip. You go with them and Costello owns you. He has feds on his payroll, Elena. You disappear into the system and I can't protect you there. You understand? You'll be vulnerable, alone, and he'll make his move. Then what do we do? My voice rose, panic bleeding through. I can't hide forever. I can't... He grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to meet his eyes. You can, you will, because the alternative is you die, and I won't allow that. Do you understand me? I won't. This is insane. This whole situation is mine. His voice gentled, but the intensity remained. This situation is mine. I created it by refusing to let you go last night. I escalated it by claiming you, and I'll fix it. How? He looked at Marco. Get her out. Use the tunnel. Take her to the safe house in Connecticut. Don't call, don't text, go completely dark. I'll handle the feds. Boss, if they don't find her, I know what they'll do. But I'd rather face federal charges than lose her to Costello. He turned back to me, cupping my face in his hands. Elena, listen to me. This gets worse before it gets better. But I promise you, I swear on my father's grave, I will fix this. You'll be safe. You'll be free. Just trust me. One more time. I saw it then, in his eyes. The weight of decisions that could destroy him. The willingness to sacrifice everything. His freedom, his empire, maybe his life. For a woman he'd known for a single night. It was insane. It was terrifying. And God help me. It felt like the most honest thing I'd ever experienced. Okay, I whispered. I trust you. His kiss was brief, fierce, tasting of espresso and desperation. Then he was pushing me toward Marco, toward the house, toward whatever came next. Go. Now. "Don't look back." But I did look back. One last glimpse of him standing in the garden, surrounded by beauty and danger in equal measure, watching me leave with an expression that looked like his heart was breaking. Just like his father's had, 40 years ago, history repeating, unless he could change the ending. Chapter 7. Into the Shadows. The tunnel was exactly what you'd expect from a man who built his life on contingencies. Narrow, dimly lit by emergency lights, and long enough that by the time we reached the exit, my legs were burning and my lungs ached. Marco moved quickly, efficiently, one hand on his weapon, the other occasionally checking his phone. He hadn't spoken since we entered the tunnel, and his silence was more unnerving than conversation would have been. We emerged in what looked like an abandoned barn, though I suspected nothing connected to Dante was truly abandoned. A black SUV with tinted windows sat waiting, keys in the ignition just as Marco had promised in the safe room. "Get in," he said, opening the driver's side door. "You know how to drive?" "Of course I wait, me? You're not coming." "I have to go back. Create a trail. Make it look like I was at the main house the whole time. The more people who can verify Mr. Salvatore's location and actions, the harder it is for the feds to make charges stick." He pulled out a phone from his jacket, another burner, I assumed, and handed it to me. "Only one number programmed. If you're in immediate danger, call it. Otherwise, stay dark. How long?" "As long as it takes. Could be days. Could be weeks." His expression softened slightly. "The safe house has everything you need. Food, clothes, books. Internet's disabled, but there's satellite TV. Cable is traceable." I took the phone with shaking hands. "Marco, is he going to be okay? Dante?" "Mr. Salvatore's been in worse situations." But there was something in his voice that suggested this wasn't entirely true. "He knows what he's doing." "That's not what I asked." Marco studied me for a long moment. "He's in love with you," he said finally. "Or he will be if he isn't already. I've never seen him like this. So yes, he'll be okay, because the alternative means losing you, and I don't think he'll survive that." The words hit me like a physical blow. We barely know each other. "Doesn't matter. Not in our world. Sometimes you just know." He stepped back from the car. "The address is in the GPS. Don't stop unless you absolutely have to. Don't use credit cards. There's cash in the glove box. And Elena, yes? If something happens, if you don't hear from us in a week, use the cash to disappear." Not the new identity he offered. Something else. Something even we can't track. Just go. Live. Then he was jogging back toward the tunnel entrance, leaving me alone with a car, a phone, and instructions that sounded disturbingly like a goodbye. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. Yesterday I'd been worried about art restoration and career advancement. Today I was fleeing federal authorities in a car that probably cost more than my yearly salary, protected by a Mafia boss who might be family, might be dangerous, and definitely made me feel things I had no business feeling. What would Nonna do? But I already knew the answer. She'd kept running, kept secrets, kept loving someone she could never have until the day she died. I wasn't sure I was strong enough to do the same. The GPS showed a route north into Connecticut, toward a part of the state I'd never visited. Deep woods, sparse population, the kind of place where people minded their own business because everyone had something to hide. Drove. The safe house was a cabin that looked straight out of a luxury magazine. All exposed beams and floor-to-ceiling, windows overlooking a private lake. It was beautiful in the way that only money could make remote places beautiful. Isolated but comfortable. Hidden but not primitive. Inside, everything Marco had promised was there. A fully stocked kitchen. A bedroom with linens that probably cost more than furniture. Books, mostly Italian literature. Many with inscriptions in a hand I was beginning to recognize as Dante's. I found myself touching the books like they were artifacts, like I could understand him better by seeing what he'd chosen to save and bring here. Dante's Inferno. Of course, the irony probably wasn't lost on him. The Leopard by Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa, a story about Sicilian nobility and change. And surprisingly, 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, with a note in the margin. Families are curses we inherit and pass on. Maybe that's all love is, choosing which curses to carry. I sank onto the couch, the book in my lap, and finally let myself cry. For my grandmother, who'd loved and lost and never told me. For Dante's father, who'd spent 40 years grieving. For Dante himself, who was probably being arrested right now for the crime of protecting someone who might be his blood. And for me, for the art restorer who'd wanted nothing more than a quiet, successful life, and who'd somehow stumbled into a story that felt like it had been written in the stars and blood decades ago. The phone Marco had given me sat on the coffee table, silent, waiting. I picked it up, staring at the single programmed number. I could call, hear his voice, know he was okay. But Marco had said to stay dark unless there was immediate danger. So I waited. The first day passed in a haze. I explored the cabin, finding expensive wine in the cellar, designer clothes in my exact size in the bedroom, even art supplies in what looked like a studio space on the second floor. As if Dante had prepared this place specifically for me, though that was impossible. We'd only met yesterday, unless he'd been preparing it for someone else, someone important enough to protect. The thought made my stomach twist with something that might have been jealousy. The second day, I tried to paint. Tried to lose myself in color and form the way I usually did when the world became too much, but my hands wouldn't cooperate. Every brushstroke felt wrong, and the canvas stayed mostly blank except for dark eyes that looked disturbingly like Dante's. The third day, I found the hidden room. I'd been exploring the cabin's basement, mostly wine and storage, when I noticed a section of wall that didn't quite match. Years of studying art and architecture had trained my eye to see inconsistencies, and this was a glaring one. A hidden panel, secured with a lock that looked more complex than anything else in the house. I should have left it alone. Should have respected Dante's privacy. But I was going insane with isolation and silence, and I needed answers. The lock wasn't electronic. It was old-fashioned, combination-based. And after 10 minutes of trying variations, I found myself keying in numbers without thinking. 1975. The year my mother was born. The year Dante's father fled Sicily. The year everything changed for our families. The lock clicked open. Behind the panel was a small room, more vault than anything else. Metal shelves lined with boxes, documents, files, and on the wall, a map of New York City with marked locations, notes in Italian, photographs of men I didn't recognize, and one photograph I did. My grandmother, young, beautiful, standing in front of a church in what had to be Sicily, and beside her, his arm around her waist, a young man with Dante's eyes and Dante's smile. His father, the proof we'd been looking for. But beneath the photograph was something else. A file with my mother's name, birth records showing Antonio Russo as the father, but with a note in the margin in that same handwriting I'd seen in the books. Blood doesn't lie. Maria is mine. Vittoria is mine, and I am nothing. My hands were shaking as I pulled out more files. Documents about my mother's life, her education, her marriage, her death from cancer at 37, all meticulously cataloged, as if someone had been watching from afar, unable to interfere but unwilling to let go completely. And at the bottom of the box, a letter addressed to me, my name in that same elegant handwriting, to Elena Russo. If you ever exist and ever find this. The phone Marco had given me rang. The sound shattered the silence like breaking glass, and I almost dropped the letter. I grabbed the phone, hands still shaking. Hello? Elena, Dante's voice tight with urgency. Listen very carefully. They know where you are. Costello's people found the safe house. You have maybe 10 minutes before they arrive. Maybe less. The world tilted. How did they? Doesn't matter. What matters is you need to run, now. There's a boat at the dock, keys under the seat. Take it across the lake. There's a car waiting on the other side. Different location, different route. Can you do that? I was already moving, the letter stuffed in my pocket, the file abandoned. Yes, but Dante, no time. I'll explain everything later. I promise. Just stay alive, Elena. Please. The desperation in his voice was visceral. What about you? I'm coming for you. I'm getting you out of this. But first you have to survive the next hour. A pause, heavy with everything unsaid. I won't lose you the way he lost her. I won't. So run, Piccola. Run and don't stop until I find you. The line went dead. Through the cabin's windows, I saw headlights approaching through the trees. I ran. Chapter 8. Hunted. The boat was a sleek speedboat, completely out of place in the serene mountain lake, and that told me everything I needed to know about how Dante planned his escapes. The keys were exactly where he'd said, and my hands only fumbled twice before I got the engine started. Behind me, car doors slammed. Voices shouted. I didn't look back. The boat roared to life, and I pushed the throttle forward with more force than necessary. The bow lifted, and suddenly I was flying across dark water, the cold spray hitting my face, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might explode. I'd never driven a boat before, had never even been on one that wasn't a tourist ferry. But terror was a remarkable teacher, and somehow I kept it straight, kept it moving toward the far shore where Dante had promised another escape. Gunfire cracked through the night. Bullets hit the water to my left, sending up small geysers. I jerked the wheel right, zigzagging instinctively, and heard more shots, closer this time. Something pinged off the boat's metal railing. They're actually trying to kill me. The thought should have been paralyzing. Instead, it sharpened everything, my vision, my reflexes, my absolute determination not to die in a lake in Connecticut after surviving everything else this insane week had thrown at me. The far shore came up fast. Too fast. I didn't know how to slow down properly, so I just cut the engine and let momentum carry me into the small dock with a bone-jarring crash that sent me sprawling. Pain exploded in my shoulder, but I didn't have time to process it. I scrambled out of the boat and ran up the dock toward the tree line, where, please God, there was supposed to be a car. More shouts behind me, closer. They'd probably called for backup on the far shore, anticipated this route. Dante's contingencies had contingencies, but apparently so did Costello's. The car was there. A nondescript Honda that looked like it belonged to a soccer mom, which was probably the point. Keys in the ignition, just like he'd promised. I threw myself into the driver's seat just as figures emerged from the tree line behind me. No time to look, no time to think. I started the engine and floored it, tires spinning on gravel before catching and launching me forward down what was barely a road, more like a logging trail. The Honda's headlights illuminated dense forest pressing in from both sides. No streetlights, no signs, no indication of where this trail led. Just trees and darkness and the certainty that if I stopped, I died. My phone, Marco's phone, rang again. I fumbled it to speaker while keeping both hands on the wheel as the car bounced over ruts and rocks. Elena, tell me you made it to the car. Dante's voice was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I'm in the car. They're behind me. They shot at me, Dante. They tried to... I know. Listen to me. That trail comes out on Route 7 in about 2 miles. When you hit the main road, go north. There's a gas station 10 miles up. Pull in, park around back, and wait. Wait for what? For me. Something in my chest loosened slightly. You're coming? I left 20 minutes ago. I should beat you there, but if I don't, if anything happens, there's a bus station next to the gas station. Buy a ticket to Boston, cash only. When you get there, go to the North End. Find a restaurant called Lucia's. Ask for Giuseppe. He's family. He'll hide you. Dante, just in case, Elena. I need you to know the plan in case I don't make it. Don't say that. Don't. My voice broke. You promised you wouldn't lose me, and I won't. But this is my world, Piccola. I plan for every contingency, including the ones where I fail. The trail widened ahead, and suddenly I was on pavement. A real road with real lines and even a sign that said Route 7. I jerked the wheel north, almost overcorrecting, and pushed the Honda faster than it was probably meant to go. Dante, they knew where I was. How? You said the safe house was a mistake. My mistake. His voice was rough with something that sounded like guilt. Costello has someone inside. One of my people. They've been feeding him information, and I didn't catch it until it was almost too late. The betrayal in his tone was visceral. Did you find out who? Yes, and they're being dealt with. The coldness that entered his voice reminded me exactly who I was dealing with. But right now, that doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you alive. Are you injured? I heard shots. I'm fine. Scared, but fine. Good, that's good. Keep driving. Stay on Route 7. I'll be there soon. But he didn't hang up. Neither did I. We stayed connected, the open line a lifeline in the darkness. And I could hear his breathing, fast and harsh. Could hear the sound of his car, much more powerful than mine, eating up the distance between us. Elena, he said after a moment. The letter. In the safe house. Did you? I found it. I didn't get to read it. But I saw the files, the photographs, my voice cracked. I know the truth now. About my grandmother. About everything. I'm sorry. I should have told you myself. Shown you differently, not like this. Would it have mattered? Would the truth have been easier if it hadn't come while I was running for my life? He laughed, a short, bitter sound. No, probably not. But at least I could have been there. Could have explained that my father spent 40 years watching over your family from afar, making sure your grandmother was safe, that your mother was cared for, that you... He stopped. That you had chances he couldn't give them directly. Pieces clicked into place. The scholarship. My art school scholarship that came from an anonymous donor. Him. He found you when you were 16, saw your work at some student exhibition, called me, told me you had her eyes and talent that couldn't be wasted. Dante's voice was thick with emotion. He died 3 months later, but he made me promise to keep watching, to make sure you were okay. You've been watching me? For years? Not watching, just aware. Making sure nothing threatened you, that you got opportunities you deserved. I never interfered, never approached you. Not until I wandered into your alley speaking his language. Until fate decided it was time for us to meet properly. Yes. The gas station appeared ahead, a bright oasis of fluorescent light in the darkness. I pulled around back like he'd instructed, parking next to a dumpster where the Honda couldn't be seen from the road. I kept the engine running. Kept the phone connected. I'm here, I said. Where are you? 5 minutes, maybe less. Elena, when I get there... He paused. There's something you need to know. About what happens next. About the choices we have to make. The seriousness in his tone made my stomach clench. What choices? I can't keep you safe here. Not anymore. Costello knows about you. The feds are building a case and there are others. Families I've crossed, enemies I've made, who'll use you to hurt me. The only way to truly protect you is to send me away, like your father did with my grandmother. Yes. The word hung between us, heavy with history. And if I don't want to go, then you're choosing danger, constant protection, a life lived in shadows and safe houses, never free, never truly yours. I thought about the girl I'd been just days ago, the one who worried about career advancement and whether she could afford new shoes. That girl would have taken the escape, would have grabbed the new identity and run, but that girl had died somewhere between the alley and this moment, and whoever I was now, whoever I was becoming, couldn't imagine walking away. Not from this, not from him. What if, I said slowly, there's a third option. I'm listening. What if we don't run? What if we fight? You said yourself, you won't lose me the way he lost her. So don't. Don't make his mistakes. Don't choose safety over... Over what, Elena? Say it. Over us. Over whatever this is between us that feels like it's been building for generations. Headlights swept across the gas station parking lot. A sleek black car, different from the Mercedes, harder, built for speed and violence, pulled up beside my Honda. The door opened, and Dante stepped out. He looked like he'd been through a war. His shirt was torn, there was a cut on his cheekbone, and his eyes were wild, dangerous, alive in a way I'd never seen. He moved to my car in 3 strides and yanked open the door. Out. Now. I stumbled out, and suddenly his hands were on me, checking for injuries with frantic intensity. When he found none, when he confirmed I was whole, alive, his, He dragged me against his chest and held on like I might disappear. Dio mio, he breathed into my hair. When I heard the shots, when I thought, I pulled back enough to see his face. I'm okay. I'm here. You're insane. You know that? Suggesting we fight instead of run? Against the Costellos, the feds, everyone who wants to use you against me? Maybe. I reached up, touching the cut on his cheek. Or maybe I'm finally understanding what it means to be Sicilian, to be your family, to not back down even when backing down is the smart choice. His laugh was half sob. You're going to get us both killed. Probably. But at least we won't spend 40 years regretting what we didn't try. The kiss was inevitable. His mouth found mine with a desperation that spoke of fear and relief and something deeper, something that had been building since the moment I'd spoken his father's language in that alley. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was claiming and being claimed. Two people who'd been orbiting each other across time and blood finally colliding. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. If we do this, if we fight, there's no going back. You understand? You'll be mine in every way that matters. Target, partner, family. No escape. I know. And you're choosing this anyway? Choosing me? I thought about my grandmother, dying with secrets and regrets. About his father, watching from afar and never daring to reach out. About all the ways love could be poisoned by fear. I'm choosing us, I said firmly. Whatever that means. However it ends. His smile was beautiful and terrible. Then we fight. Together. From the highway, the sound of approaching sirens grew louder. Dante grabbed my hand. Time to go. We have a war to start. And despite everything, the danger, the insanity, the certainty that nothing about this was smart or safe or reasonable, I followed him into his car and didn't look back. Because sometimes love wasn't about choosing the right path. Sometimes it was about choosing the person worth walking through hell beside, even if hell was exactly where we were headed. Chapter 9. War and Promises. Dante drove like a man possessed, the powerful car eating up highway miles while I sat beside him, still trying to process the fact that I'd chosen this, chosen him, chosen a life that might be brutally short but impossibly intense. Where are we going? I asked as we merged onto I-95, heading south toward the city. The one place Costello won't expect. Manhattan, my territory, the heart of everything. His hands were steady on the wheel, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the coiled violence just beneath his controlled surface. If we're fighting, we fight from a position of strength. He'll be waiting for that, watching your properties. Probably, which is why we're not going to any of my known locations. He glanced at me, and something in his expression softened. There's a place, somewhere no one knows about. Not Marco, not the other families. Just me. And now you. The intimacy of that, being brought into a space reserved only for him, made my breath catch. We drove in silence for a while, the city lights growing brighter on the horizon. My shoulder ached from the boat crash, my hands were shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline, and the letter I'd stuffed in my pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. Can I read it now? I asked quietly. The letter your father left me. Dante's jaw clenched. You might not want to. Not while I'm... Please. He nodded once, sharply. I pulled out the envelope, carefully unfolding the paper inside. The handwriting was elegant, old world, exactly like the inscriptions I'd seen in the books. To Elena Russo, if you ever exist and ever find this, I am writing this letter knowing I will never send it, never deliver it, never see your face or hear your voice. But perhaps that is fitting. The men in my family seem destined to love women we cannot have. If you are reading this, My son has found you. Or you have found him. Fate, I think, has a sense of irony. I knew your grandmother in another life. I loved her in the way that young men love. Absolutely, recklessly, with no understanding of what that love might cost. When I had to leave, I told myself it was to protect her, that the violence following my family would destroy her if I stayed. I was a coward dressed in nobility's clothes. She married a good man. She had a daughter, your mother, who carried my eyes and my stubborn nature. I watched from afar, sent money when I could hide it as luck or scholarship, and convinced myself that this distance was love. It was not. It was fear. And now I am dying, and I have only one piece of wisdom to leave you. Do not make my mistakes. If my son loves you, and he will, because you are everything I lost, do not let fear make you walk away. Do not spend decades wondering what if. The Salvatore men love once, completely, destructively. It is our curse and our gift. If Dante offers you his protection, take it. If he offers you his heart, treasure it. If he offers you forever, grab it with both hands and do not let go, because forever is the only thing worth dying for, and the only thing worth living for. Domenico Salvatore P.S. Tell my son I am proud of him. Tell him the empire was never what mattered. Tell him that love, messy, dangerous, impossible love, is the only legacy that survives us. I finished reading with tears streaming down my face. Beside me, Dante's hands had tightened on the wheel until his knuckles were white. He knew, I whispered. He knew you'd find me. That this would happen. He was a romantic and a fool. But Dante's voice was thick. And apparently I'm following in his footsteps. Is that such a bad thing? He pulled off the highway suddenly, taking an exit into a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Old warehouses near the water, converted into expensive lofts and galleries. Art district money trying to hide behind industrial bones. He parked in an underground garage beneath a building that looked abandoned but probably cost millions, and finally turned to face me fully. Elena, before we go inside, before this gets more complicated than it already is, I need you to understand something. What? I meant what I said earlier. About you being mine. About protecting you. His hand came up, cupping my face. But it's more than that. More than obligation or family honor, or any of the reasons I've been telling myself explain why I can't let you go. My heart was hammering. What is it then? It's you. The way you looked at me in that alley. Not with fear, but with fury. The way you speak in a language that shouldn't exist outside my memories. The way you chose to fight instead of run, even though running is smarter. His thumb traced my cheekbone. It's the way you make me feel like maybe my father was right. Maybe love is the only thing that matters. Maybe everything else, the power, the money, the empire, is just noise. Dante, I'm falling in love with you. Probably already have. And I know it's insane. I know we barely know each other. But my father spent 40 years regretting that he never said these words to your grandmother. I won't make that mistake. The kiss was different this time, slower, deeper, full of promises we both knew might be impossible to keep. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless and shaking and certain of only one thing. Whatever happened next, I was exactly where I was meant to be. Take me inside, I said. Show me this place no one else knows about. And then tell me your plan for how we survive this. His smile was sharp, dangerous, full of the calculated violence that made him who he was. We don't just survive, Piccola. We win. The loft was stunning. Exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River. Art on the walls that probably belonged in museums. But unlike his estate, this place felt lived in. Personal. A leather jacket thrown over a chair. books stacked on the coffee table, a kitchen that looked actually used. "This is where you come when you need to remember you're human," I said. "Yes, how did you—" "Because that's what it feels like. Real. Not a showpiece." He moved to the windows, looking out at the city lights reflecting on black water. "My father bought this place in the 80s. Used it the same way. To escape, to think. To remember who he was beneath the crown." He turned back to me. He left it to me in his will. Not to the organization. To me personally. I think he always hoped I'd bring someone here. Someone who mattered. And have you? Before me? No. Never. The weight of that admission settled between us. I moved to stand beside him at the window. The city spread out before us. Millions of lights, millions of lives, and somewhere in that maze, people who wanted us dead or captured or separated. "So what's the plan?" I asked. "How do we fight the Costellos, the feds, and come out of this alive?" "We changed the game. Right now, they're hunting you because you're my weakness, a way to hurt me, a vulnerability." His reflection in the glass was sharp, calculating. "So we make you something else. We make you untouchable. How?" "We tell the truth. Or at least a version of it." He turned to face me fully. "Tomorrow we call a meeting. Every major family. The Costellos, the Russos, the Morettis. Everyone who has a stake in New York. And we announce that you're family. Blood. That you're under full Salvatore protection. And any move against you is a move against me. They'll want proof. Which is why we'll give them the DNA test I said we shouldn't do. We'll make it public, undeniable. Yes, it creates a paper trail. But it also makes you legitimate, protected by the same blood codes that have governed our world for centuries." I thought about it, turning over the implications. "And the feds? The kidnapping charges? You tell them the truth. That you came willingly, that you've discovered you're related to me, that you needed protection, and that every action I took was to keep you safe from people who'd use you as a weapon." He moved closer. "It's not perfect. They might not believe it all. But it creates reasonable doubt, makes prosecution difficult, and Costello? Costello loses. Because once you're confirmed as family, as blood, he can't touch you without starting a war he can't win. The other families won't support him. Not over something this clear-cut. It was elegant, dangerous, and just crazy enough to work. "There's one problem," I said softly. "What?" "If we do this, if we make my connection to you public, make me officially part of your world, there's no going back. Elena Russo, the art restorer, dies, and I become—" "What? Elena Salvatore? A Mafia princess? Someone who chooses this life?" "Yes, no hesitation. But you'd also be protected, safe, free to live without constantly looking over your shoulder." Would I be free? Or would I just be in a prettier cage? His expression became almost vulnerable. "I can't promise you freedom, Elena. Not the kind you had before, but I can promise you choice. Agency. The ability to shape what your life looks like within this world. And I can promise you me. All of me. The good, the dangerous, the parts that might terrify you. They already terrify me." I reached up, touching his face. "But they also make me feel alive in a way I never have before." "Then say yes. Say you'll do this. Say you'll be mine, publicly, officially, permanently." It was a proposal and a prison sentence and a promise all at once. I thought about my old life. The quiet apartment. The restoration work. The loneliness I'd pretended was independence. I thought about my grandmother. Keeping secrets until she died. I thought about Dante's father. Watching from afar and regretting every moment. And I thought about the letter's final words. "Forever is the only thing worth dying for. And the only thing worth living for." "Yes," I whispered. "I'll do it. I'll be yours." His kiss was claiming, possessive, full of relief and desire, and something deeper that felt like coming home. Outside the windows, the city glittered with dangerous beauty. Tomorrow, we'd face the families. Tomorrow, we'd start a war or end one. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight we had this moment. This choice. This falling into each other with the certainty that some things were worth risking everything for, even if everything was all we had to lose. Chapter 10. Blood and Forever. The meeting was held in neutral territory, a restaurant in Chinatown that had been serving as a family meeting ground for 50 years. The owner, ancient and shrewd, asked no questions and provided a private room where men in expensive suits could discuss things civilians didn't need to hear. I wore a dress Dante had provided. Simple, elegant, black. Armor disguised as fashion. My hair was pulled back, my grandmother's necklace, the one thing of hers I'd kept at my throat, a reminder of where I came from, who I was fighting for. Dante stood beside me as we entered the private room, his hand at the small of my back. Possessive, protective, a statement before any words were spoken. The room fell silent, 8 families represented. 8 bosses, each with their guards, their consigliere, their weight of history and power. And at the far end of the table, Vincent Costello, his silver hair gleaming under the restaurant's dim lighting, his expression carefully neutral, Salvatore. The greeting came from Antonio Russo. No relation to my grandmother, but the coincidence of the name felt like fate's sense of humor. He ran the Brooklyn operations, had known Dante's father. You called this meeting. We came. Speak. Dante's hand tightened briefly on my back, then released. He moved to the head of the table, commanding the room effortlessly. Thank you for coming. I know some of you traveled far, left important business. I wouldn't have asked if it weren't critical. His gaze swept the room, landing finally on Costello. Recently there's been confusion about a woman under my protection. Accusations, threats, federal involvement. It's created instability that affects all of us. The woman in question, Costello said, his voice deceptively mild. The one you kidnapped from my territory? The one, Dante corrected, ice in his tone. Who is family? Who came willingly under my protection when she discovered her heritage. Who has every right to Salvatore's security and resources. Murmurs around the table. Family? Antonio Russo leaned forward. What family? I know your bloodline, Salvatore. There are no cousins. No siblings. Your father's line ended with you. No. Dante gestured to me. It didn't. Elena, come here. I moved to stand beside him, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. These men had built empires on violence and strategy. They'd seen everything, survived everything. I would not let them see my fear. Elena Russo, Dante said, his voice carrying easily, is my cousin. Her grandmother, Vittoria Russo, was involved with my father before he fled Sicily. The result of that relationship was Elena's mother, Maria, making Elena my father's granddaughter. My blood, my family. The room exploded into conversation. Costello's face went from neutral to thunderous. That's impossible. Convenient. A story manufactured to what? Dante cut him off. To protect someone who stumbled into danger through no fault of her own? Yes, that's exactly what it is. But it's also the truth. He pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. DNA results, processed by an independent lab. Confirmed by 2 separate tests. Elena shares approximately 12.5% of my genetic material, consistent with first cousins once removed. The science doesn't lie. I watched Costello's expression transform as he realized he'd been outmaneuvered. If the DNA was real, and it was, Dante had rushed the tests through in 24 hours at enormous expense. Then I wasn't a random civilian. I was family, protected by every code and tradition that governed their world. Antonio Russo took the envelope, examined the results with the careful attention of someone who understood what was at stake. Finally, he nodded. It's legitimate. The markers match. He looked at me with new interest. Vittoria's granddaughter. I'll be damned. She was a beautiful woman. I met her once, years ago. You have her eyes. Something warm unfurled in my chest. Then we're clear, Dante said. Elena is under full Salvatore protection. Any move against her is an act of war against my family, and will be treated accordingly. And the federal charges? Another boss spoke up, Moretti, I thought, from New Jersey. The kidnapping allegations?